Hey, how's everything going today? So I was thinking this morning, I woke up and I was thinking about compassion and how, we all kind of practice a certain kind of compassion, every religion in the world, whether it's Christian or Buddhist or Hindu, um, Islamic, Hebrew, Sikhs, almost every religion in the world has a basic premise based on compassion. And the thing with compassion, I think, is that we might have kind of misplaced the use of it. We don't really know how to use it anymore and what it means to be a compassionate human being. So I once heard a story, there was a Zen story, and it's sort of about compassion. This old farmer, his wife was fairly ill, and he went and saw a Buddhist monk, a Zen monk, and he said, "Can you come to my house and recite sutras for my wife, so it'll help her heal?" And he said, "Yeah, it's fine." And he went, and he was sitting on the porch, and he was reciting sutras. And within the sutra, he called down compassion and healing for all sentient beings. And this kind of irritated the farmer a little bit. He said, "Well, what's with that? I just asked you to pray for my wife." And the monk said, "Well, the goal of compassion and the goal of Buddhism is to pray for all sentient beings that their suffering will be ended." And the farmer kind of quieted down a little bit, and he sat and he thought, and he said, "Well, listen, I kind of agree with the fact that sutras should be recited for all sentient beings, but I was wondering if you could just, in this one time, just don't include my neighbor because he's pretty mean to me." And I think that's kind of how we start looking at compassion. And we have strong compassion for people who are within our groups, within our circles, within our community, people who are like us. It's easy to feel some kind of compassion for them and support them and need them. It's harder when they're outside of that, when they have a different ethnicity, a different language, a different color, or a different this or that religion. Whatever it is, we start be using them, and we forget that compassion is really for everybody. And another issue around compassion is that we confuse compassion and pity. Like sometimes we pity people, "Oh, that poor person, oh, they're suffering terrible, oh, it's really horrible, I feel so bad." And we kind of drop it there, we don't really feel compelled to help. Where in compassion, you're sort of compelled to help. You see an issue, you see somebody struggling, you see somebody having a hard time or suffering, and you want to relieve that as best you can. So you try to address it in whatever means you can to end that suffering. There's a big difference between those two things. One is productive and one just doesn't really do much of anything. And then I think another issue around compassion is some people think that compassion is seeing somebody who's suffering and letting them have it more or less because you believe it's part of their process, and maybe that'll make them stronger, or maybe it'll help them reach enlightenment. One kind of, that kind of a thing. But more often than not, that's the kind of a view that just gets you sort of off the hook, where you don't feel you have to do anything. So compassion is, it's the basis of all religious things, and it's also the basis of all secular thought. It's based on the same idea. In a more secular world that we live in, people see compassion in a real basic way as a way to keep our species going. If you see a wounded person, you help them. If you see someone suffering, you help them. Not necessarily out of a goodness thing, but as a biological instinct to keep the species going. And that's sort of a very basic secular form of compassion. But even in the secular world, we want to be compassionate to people and people that suffer. And one of the ways I think to do that is to really sit down as a person, individually, apart from whatever your beliefs and things are, and really take a look at your community, your values, the people you associate with, people who are of you, the people who you have a kindredness with. And look at all the mores and rules and regulations and what's acceptable and not acceptable within your group and within yourself. Not only to judge the outside world, but also judging what your inside world thinks and values. And take each one of those precepts, each one of those mores or each one of those guidelines that your community or your group or whatever you want to call it has, and compare those to the great compassion of do unto others, the golden rule, practicing compassion for all sentient beings, however, whatever language you want to use for that, and take each one of those constructs and compare it to that. And if it's something that leads towards a compassionate life, that, showing compassion towards others, then it's something worth hanging on to. If it doesn't line up, if all these things don't match, and you find yourself in a group that doesn't share those values of compassion, maybe you drank the wrong Kool-Aid with that group, and you might want to consider changing some things. Because you don't have to stay within a group that doesn't practice basic tenets that you find important. It's a real serious time we live in. It's really time to take back what we've given away so freely out of fear, and take it back and give ourselves back the humanity that we are so easily giving away. And excuse me, and at some point you're going to be standing before your Creator, and your Creator is going to ask you about you, not about your group, not about your friends, just you. And you're going to be judged by the exact same judgments you used upon the world. If you have biases, you'll be treated with bias. If you have hatred, you'll be judged on hatred. If you have love, you'll be judged on love. But you'll be measured by your own ruler. And if your ruler was compassion, then you'll be treated with compassion. And in a more secular thing, like a secular way of looking at it, if you're not really a religious person, is to say, what do I want to leave this world in? What do I want to leave to my children, my grandchildren, my great-grandchildren, their children, on and on and on? Do we want them to carry forward with our acts of kindness and compassion, or would you like them to take with them your hatred, your compulsive need for things, your greed, your wanting, your desire, your anger, your prejudices? Or do you want them to take away your kindness and your love and your compassion? I think in the Beatitudes, Jesus says, blessed are the poor. And people have been misinterpreting that as, it's really good to be poor. You should always strive not to have anything. You should just live a poor life. That's not what he's saying. He's saying the poor are poor in spirit. They're poor in spirit. They carry with them an intense amount of divinity, because their spirit is where their strength is. Their poverty, that has nothing to do with it. It has to do with clinging to objects and things. But a person who's, they use the word poor, but it really means somebody who's not attached to possessions and things like that. It's easy for them to practice their divine compassion, because they don't have that, I want mine, this is mine, greed. They don't have that obsession over objects and things. They're more obsessed with their own divinity. And that's what they want to find. They don't really care about things. Anyway, it's really important time. This is like a critical time, especially in the United States. We're living with this unbelievable, weird political system that wants to keep everybody afraid and divisive and fighting and not seeing things. So just even for a day, if you could shut off everything and sit back and say, okay, here's what I think, here's what I believe, here's what I know. Match that to some kind of a golden rule that you might have, and just see if it lines up. And if it doesn't, act on it. Become the thing that you are. Regain your divinity. You had it. Compassion, we're born with compassion. We're just compassionate beings. We help things. When you come upon a wounded animal, you pick it up and help it. When you come upon a wounded person, you help them. Then we're taught not to be compassionate. We're taught to only be compassionate to this and to that, and not for this and not for that. And we become separate from our compassion. We have to say, oh yeah, I should really feel compassion for this, rather than it being our general expression. So anyway, ponder that deep, as deep as you can go, and see what you come up with. And let me know. And if you can, give this a like, and if you want more content, I'll be happy to put it up. Subscribe if you want. Look forward to hearing from you. Thank you.